Good evening and welcome to the September meeting of the Lopatcong Township Planning Board. At this time, I would like to invite you to join us in the silent moment of prayer, followed immediately by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was a little confused looking at the calendar. I almost didn't come because I thought the meeting was next week.
Yeah, it's tough when you get
September
that
has
one
five.
stuck in there.
Yeah, 5 Wednesdays instead of usually it's 4.
Okay, at this time, I'm required to state that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided indicating the time and place of the meeting in accordance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975 by advertising a notice in the Star Gazette and the Express Times and by posting a copy on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Beth, may I have roll call, please?
Yes, members Delcaro,
Here.
Weimer, Dagan, Fishback, France, Doral,
Here.
Mayor McKay,
Here.
Vice Chairman Fire,
Here.
Chairman Bentley.
Here. Right on to old business. Has everyone received a copy and read the minutes of the August 26, 2015 planning board meeting? Or are there any additions, corrections, or comments?
I just got them. Did anyone else get them before this?
Yeah, you all got them. I mailed everything out. It was a stream of things. The sign ordinance, it was, your letter to the Highlands, and then the minutes were behind that.
What, you guys all got them?
No, to be honest with you, I know you strung them all together, and I got to the end, and I didn't see minutes. So.
You don't think they were in there?
No.
Copy I got.
Oh, I'll have to go check. Well, you don't have to approve them tonight. You can wait and do it
all
the
right.
next
If you
meeting if
haven't,
you like.
then we'll defer that to the next
Yeah,
meeting.
we can't really.
That's fine, no problem.
All right.
I got them emailed to me, so I
I emailed.
assumed everybody got them. Sorry about that. So we'll
Yeah, I did
postpone
too.
that until the next
Sorry
meeting and
about
everyone's had a chance to review. The next order of business is the resolution for the recommendation on the proposed side ordinance 15-10. You have a copy in the packet here of that ordinance.
We have that?
That wasn't her.
Yes.
Any additions or corrections to that ordinance? Comments on it?
I thought he captured the discussion well myself.
In that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Beth, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, members Delcaro,
Yes.
Doral,
Yes.
Mayor McKay, Vice Chairman Fire,
Yes.
Chairman Bentley.
Yes. Okay, that one. The other order of business is the revised zoning history report on block 116, lots 26.01, 27, 27.02, and 28. This was discussed at the last meeting, and we voted to approve it with the additions and corrections that were included in the vote. So, and I understand that has been forwarded already to the council, so there's really no further action on it. So,
I just have one comment. It's not on the
Sure.
report,
No
maybe
problem.
for the mayor's benefit. When George quoted the reserve capacity in that report, it was based on an assumption for the Ingersoll Rand, so and we haven't seen, real figures yet. So
We have, Paul's worked on a couple of updates with that.
has he?
Yeah.
I think we had 50,000 set aside, and we haven't seen any real figures yet. So
Yeah, I don't think you can see it at that.
I don't think it will either. But, I just point that out.
Are you saying that 50,000 gallons left?
Gallons.
400.
I think he said 83,
Gallons, right.
but that 83 is based on setting aside 50,000 for Ingersoll Rand.
Okay.
which was an estimate at the time.
Right.
We haven't seen
I know we haven't seen
their
our numbers from
projection yet.
Mutual Rand yet.
But, and
So
this
is that
thing,
50,000 in the 80 or is it in addition?
No, it's in it's
So it's
pulled out.
120,
Yeah,
120.
yeah. If that didn't develop at all, you'd have whatever we set aside for that.
and then this thing will take something like, depending on how they do it, 30,
40,000.
40,000. Yeah, 40,000 on top.
Right. So what does that leave? What's left?
Not much.
Not much. Especially if we,
And I understand, I know that there's some 20,000 in dispute right now.
Mhm.
Is that, am I correct in saying?
Yeah, and that's what he put in the report.
With Powhatan, right?
Yeah, it
Right.
goes back,
Right.
must be to the 80s. And when the mall was built, portion of the mall's in Lopat, portion of the mall is in Powhatan.
Yeah.
And we agreed at that time to give them 20,000 gallons. And they claim that was never done. And I don't want to go through it now because I don't have everything in front of me, but the next contract that came out was 10 years later. And, you know, it was our position that everything was reconciled by that time. Nobody objected. So it's never been litigated. You know, they sent a letter to us, we responded. And that's where it sits.
wasn't that where there was a developer coming in and it was an inclusionary housing project, and they were the ones that instituted the suit for 24,000
Alpha
gallons.
519
That's
Associates.
what it
And,
was.
yeah.
That
And
all pretty much bollock stuff.
yeah, and it was never resolved, so.
Is that
it's
that
out there.
senior community that's looking about?
Like-
Next to the mall?
No.
No, this is something long ago that's long gone.
This is something that has to be resolved in 20,000 gallons. I
Well,
mean,
especially-
Well, Lopat's position was,
It has to be
it
resolved.
has been resolved, right?
We have to know where we stand with that. I mean, 20,000,
Yeah, if this gets approved,
yeah. I mean,
We got
have to know
very
where we
little
stand,
left.
just so we know exactly what we have left over.
Well,
Well,
it's,
if this gets approved, we don't have anything left for even if an office building wanted to come here.
I mean, we're down to about nothing. And along with that, in conjunction with it, there is also the Highlands Municipal Plan Conformance Grant Program. The Highlands is now forcing us to really review all of the areas that are sewered or could be sewered now for capacity. And that may affect what our housing amount will be under the Highlands.
What is could be sewered? I mean, everything could be sewered if you want to spend enough money.
Well, but the point is that the Highlands has an overlay of our master plan, which indicates we have the center designation for residential, which is basically the existing residential areas in Lopatcong, and we have the industrial center, which encompasses Strikers Road from the railroad to 519, and also Route 22, which is basically highway business. They are also sewer, even though it's not there yet, or there's no lines running out to that portion. Those are the areas that, upon review of what we have to do now, re-looking at that and reevaluating what it is, that they probably would not allow an extension of those. In other words, if we wanted to go, or if somebody wanted to go across Strikers Road right now, buy up a golf course or the farm that's out there, build a housing development, sue for the inclusionary housing or the builder's remedy, as they used to refer to it,
Mm-hmm.
they could force the courts to have us extend sewer to those areas under the protection of the Highlands and, you know, with the COA, we wouldn't have to do that. You know, we tried to protect the farmland, and I believe that's the Klein farm that butts up against the golf course there, and that goes all the way down to 519 and butts up against the preservation area of Highlands, where it takes off up from there. So we thought we had that pretty much accomplished, where we would see a 1,200 unit housing development show up there. So anyway, that's what the center designations are. That has to be re-reviewed. Also, our housing, fair share housing program has to be reviewed. Modules 2, 3 and 5 and 7, I think, whatever they are. Whatever the
In the
module
letter,
numbers
yeah.
are.
Yeah.
running those. So that's all under review. We just got grant money. I believe you got a letter from Mrs. Nordstrom for
Yeah, we responded to that.
approve the grant money to be expended in the amounts that you had indicated to her would be expended and the schedule to do that. George indicated to me, Tom talked to him this week, that they were in pursuit of that. They were looking for a couple of CD discs that came along with that
Yes,
in order to, those were the
That's
models
those,
that they could
yeah.
use to submit the information we had on the reviews.
they may have them. Beth, did you give them the discs yet?
Pardon?
The discs?
They're getting overnighted tomorrow.
Okay.
So,
I didn't know if he was coming tonight, so I went to the city. Overnight, but it's not.
Okay.
so that, how that's gonna affect whatever we have left over here, whether the affected Piazza track that Martin's looking to do, you know, and along with that, we were just discussing it before, I understand that the person who was going to develop our number under the program we had when we filed suit against the Supreme Court, or the declaratory judgment
Mhm.
with the Supreme Court, had a stroke. He's no longer able to do the figures, and he was working in conjunction with a group at Rutgers to come up with the figures that each township would have. I understand he's returning the money, and the Supreme Court has thrown out that whole block that he was working on for the communities that he was involved with. So we're back at square one, figuring out what we're going to do. In that fair share housing module, we have to estimate based on the round three numbers that we had, and have to review that and come up with a cursory review of whatever they want as far as information to the Highlands, and where that's going to wind up. I don't know. The last numbers I remember were back in 2014, and we were required to have 57 units in addition to what we already had for that round three total build out of the township. Now, upon the re-review of the fair share housing plan based on where the sewered areas and watered areas are in the township, that may reduce that number, because when we did that forecast of what the town would be built out, we had to take every open space in the area that was, you know, they could build on, estimated from that point of view. But that may be reduced. I don't know what formula, if they're going back to the round one, which was the original Mount Laurel decision, which I assume is what we're working under now, because they declared unconstitutional round two and round three in the court decision. So it kind of leaves us up that nobody seems to know how they're going to figure the number out. They were basing it on what all the municipalities that filed the declaratory judgment with the Supreme Court to have their housing programs certified, and that's what we could use. Well, since we've been doing this since 2004, it's like, who the hell knows where it's going?
So it's in limbo right now, right?
It's in limbo. So until they come up with a number, you know, do we need?
Well, with all these things in limbo, I mean, how can we,
Which
we approved some big housing tract to start.
Well, we've been going through this since 2004. You work up numbers, you do what they want you to do to try to stay in compliance. So we had the protection of somebody coming in and saying, well, we want 6 houses per acre. And ours requires no more than 4 in the normal building code. 5 was the norm for the builder's remedy before, 5th of an acre, but now I understand 6 seems to be some of the.
Well, the thing is, how can the courts, if they do make a decision, whenever, how can they hold any township liable if they go ahead and make decisions, you know, to go ahead and build in housing? What do you do? Just, you know, because they themselves are guilty, you know, of being irresponsible and not doing anything about this, and keeping everybody in suspense and guessing.
They're the court.
Well,
They're the ultimate authority.
I'm trying to understand, how can they hold any township liable For what? If the township goes ahead and moves ahead
They
and
can,
approves.
they can come in
Development.
and force a community to spend the money on building their own affordable housing, which would put us in a position we'd probably need a housing authority similar to Phillipsburg. To run these units, maintain these units. They could come in, cut off all of our state aid if they wanted to. You know, I mean, there are remedies of the court that they can come in and
I
then
understand that.
put punishment on us. And we were looking at it, their
So
original,
what does the township do? Stand still?
well, the only thing I think you can do if you want to be opposite, some townships, you know, like maybe 50% of the townships in New Jersey did take that stance where they didn't do anything with color. But those townships were totally built out anyway. A lot of the shore communities and, eastern half of New Jersey, some of those communities didn't have a half an acre left to build anything. But we had a lot of farmland out here when it started. We saw what happened with Greenwich Township when Toll Brothers came in and built Wyndham Farms, Greenwich Chase. They were all court decisions forcing them to build those type into communities. And then we saw what happened with the low-income housing with the Chase all along 519 there was like row houses come up, not the most attractive part of anything, and they were isolated in one section. And that really didn't look as, you know, you would try to intermingle them in between the sections so it didn't look so obvious of what it was. So, and when they saw that was happening there, I mean, a lot of people were very upset about that, but that's the way it was. And it totally changed that community upside down. So.
Now, I had brought up before, and I think the answer came back, but I'm not sure. It's kind of wishy-washy. Clymer Village, where we only get some of the units that we claim, and there supposedly was some agreement back sometime.
At some time, I never saw.
I keep trying to get the agreement. Nobody has it.
Well,
Do we have to honor that? I mean, it's just somebody's memory. It's not a document. Nothing's recorded that I can find.
Who's the attorney back there?
Palucci. He was the one
He's
who
got a
worked on
record
it,
of it
Michael
somewhere.
Palucci.
Mike was, I don't.
He wasn't
recall
the
Mike-
town's
no,
attorney, but he was the
town's
attorney for that. He worked on that matter. On that, because that was a pilot project.
Wasn't somebody gonna check with Harmony to see if they had the agreement? George was gonna do that.
Yeah, I think so. Nobody ever got back to me. I've tried to even get to National Church Properties, and they say they're going to call back, and they don't. They said they had no record of it, but they didn't send me anything. So, you know, that would solve our problem, because there's like 50 or 40 units in there that somebody else thinks they have credit for. But
well, I think a lot has to do with, since they do not pay taxes, they pay a fee in lieu of taxes.
Mhm.
I'm not sure.
no, we do
if
get
that
some of them.
deed restriction. Well, I guess then we get about half the units. that
Yeah,
are
a
in
little
there.
less. Yeah, maybe a little more than half.
And at that point, I don't remember, that would have been under round one. And I'm not sure whether we got credit for all the units or we got.
We get credit for
half a
some.
credit
Some of them are in
for-
there, and that's what George said. Some of them.
But if I remember, and I'm only guessing at this one, Tom, I don't even know what I could go back to look into. And I wasn't on any boards or involved in any of it at that time, but just following it in the newspapers.
Mhm.
I think in order to qualify for low-income housing, they have to be deed restricted. I'm not sure that the National Church Council ever had a deed restriction. They were providing HUD housing,
Yeah, it was HUD project.
based on income and stuff like that, but I don't know if they ever restricted the deed for that property with that. And I think that was one of the.
But we do
problems.
count half of them.
We do, we had that agreement that we do count them, but, and COA accepts it, but
Mhm.
I don't know if we want to open the can of worms with going back into a deed restriction and losing those also. So
That's a shame.
I mean, and when you look at all of the qualifications for Brickley Park, they qualify, all except for the deed restriction. They were approached at one time to see if the management group wanted to set a certain number of the units on their, in the buildings, I should say, under deed restriction. They refused absolutely. What it is, Mark, I don't know, you look, it's a 30-year deed restriction to whoever owns it, that they will maintain those properties at an affordable housing, an affordable rate dictated on what region you're in from the state for affordable housing. And at the end of 30 years, that goes away and the landlord's capable of doing anything he wants. But in the meantime, if they either sell a unit or get rid of the unit, somehow, that has to transfer on the deed to the next owner just to maintain that property as an inclusionary housing. There's, over the years, there's been so many.
Because that would otherwise, be perfect.
That would give us. That would give us.
It would give us hundreds of units.
You're asking the owner
Give us another.
to swallow a big bill of it.
Probably no more than you swallow it already. All these new ones coming on now, that place has been as low as 35%.
I don't want to hold
Yeah,
anybody
like
up
it's right.
anymore, so, that was the business that we had to do today, and just a discussion of where we're at and where we're going, because some of these deadlines are coming up shortly that we have to do. I think October 15th is one of them. And the Supreme Court decision is supposed to come down in November sometime. And then it's 6 months to review that or comment on it, however they want to do it, so. Other than that.
I think I have something I'd like to say.
Sure,
You don't mind?
absolutely. Anybody's free.
Last meeting, I had what I described as an unpleasant experience with a fellow in the audience. And I told him to be quiet. And I don't apologize for that, but I apologize to Gary and the board. I should have given him a chance to handle that, but I have a short fuse for that situation, and maybe it's good that everybody knows that. He said, point of order is a resident's right to interrupt the meeting. And then he went on and he said to the attorney, you don't know what you're doing, and so on. I just want to clarify a couple of things. The board adopts Robert's Rules of Order every January. We could adopt something else. We happen to adopt Robert's Rules. That's a guideline for conducting meetings, and they define right in there a meeting. Their definition of a meeting is an assembling of members of the deliberative body. We are the members. The audience is not members. They have Robert's Rules of Order confers no rights upon a member of the audience to jump up and interrupt the meeting. Secondly, even if you argue against that, the Robert's Rules falls fairly low in the hierarchy. State law comes first, your charter, bylaws, and so on. The local public, or the Open Public Meetings Act, excludes planning boards from having to offer public comment at all.
That's true.
We do it as a courtesy, but we don't have to. So they're all given an opportunity to speak, and I think that's behavior that shouldn't be tolerated on this board. I'm sure Gary would have stopped it. I got mad so quick. I jumped up, and I apologize for that. But
Should be tolerated anyway.
I've had my say on that, and I hope this board, accepts that.
Any other comment on that situation?
Well, maybe we should have a copy of Robert's Rules up here, because no one knows them. And
It's a book.
I know it is. Yeah.
But
I've looked through them, but
I know what it does, and it governs the membership. There's no right for somebody to jump up and interrupt the meeting and start telling the attorney doesn't know what he's doing. And the Robert's Rules doesn't provide for that, and the Open Public Meetings Act doesn't provide for that. You'll never get anything done if we allow that to happen. So.
I think next time if that was to happen, I think it needs to be explained, the definition of using the term, point of order.
Mhm.
I think some people just, a lot of cases really don't know what they're talking about. And they like to use
I agree
certain
with you.
languages for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That's why I said we should get a copy of it and keep it up here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What I'm saying is that
Because-
someone stands up in the audience and.
Well, people go to the internet and research it and
Yeah,
come up
well,
with something.
if they proceed to use that, point of order, when in fact they really don't have their facts, what that, how it's used, when it's used, and who can use it. That needs to be clarified.
I think the attorney attempted to do that with him.
Right. I know.
so I feel I personally was on sound ground telling them to be quiet, but I really should have let the chair handle that. I apologize. But that's why I did it. I have a short fuse for that sort of thing. And I don't put up with it.
Okay, I believe there was another person in the audience that wanted to know why we didn't have public comment on agenda items before the meeting.
That's Marla. Yeah.
And it's been my experience that we're a little bit different than council meetings are, where you have a full agenda out there on different property resolutions and stuff like that, and you're fully almost vetted before you have the meeting on the knowledge of what's going to be contained in those agenda items. We don't have that luxury. Many of the, like the church coming in last time, I mean, that was an agenda item, and if they were to ask questions, I had no idea what that church was coming in to do at that meeting. I felt in all fairness through the years that in order for us to have an intelligent discussion, we really have to know what we're facing beforehand. So let them make the presentation of what they have, and we allow for a public comment at the end of the meeting when all of us know the facts of what they're trying to present to our board when they come in. And especially when we have a formal meeting on a site plan. The experts haven't testified yet. I mean, most of the questions would involve in a large development, say Ingersoll, and you could see that in the presentation you had at the council meeting of how many trucks are coming in, where is the water going to go, how is it going to affect us with this, what hours are you going to operate? We don't even know that, so we've had a chance to vet their experts better to tell us. So I always felt that to allow questions at the end was a better way to proceed than it was in the beginning when really nobody knew what the presentation was going to be, and I didn't want to cut anybody off because it was an agenda item, and as you know with the council, you don't discuss agenda items at the audience participation at the end. They've already had their chance to ask their questions on the agenda items. So, I mean, that's my reasoning behind the way we did it. We have been doing it here. As I say, as Joe indicated before, we're under no obligation to allow any public comment here. And this was just as a, wanted to fully vet what was going out here. Sometimes it comes back to bite you. But,
Well,
I think what they're worried about, a lot of people, is that the actions are taken before they have a chance to say something.
well, I mean, the actual rules, they would get no chance to ask questions on it. And I don't think that's fair either. So, I mean, we allow them to make the comments at the end when the presentation is made. We even go as far as to allow them to question the experts as they have it. So it's relevant in everybody's mind and what they're talking about when they're here. Of course, in some cases, it just goes so far afield that you've got to gavel it down. So anyway.
yeah, the hearing process is a very structured process, and it's that way for a reason. They have an opportunity to question each witness. They have an opportunity to comment at the end,
Absolutely.
present their own testimony. So comment before we even start the meeting is just going to delay the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, it also precludes them from asking questions at the end of the meeting about any agenda item. And basically, all we're discussing is agenda items. That's my reasoning behind it. I mean, next chairman can change that in any work minute if he wants, so. Or I shouldn't say the chairman, I'm sorry, it's the board. Never the chairman making decisions here, other than the procedural. So, anyway, any further questions? I don't need to hold you guys up any further. I appreciate you coming out. And, got that resolution fixed. I hope we have some business for the next meeting. I don't know what's happening with the Ingersoll.
The church didn't submit any drawings or
Nothing
anything?
yet, no.
Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Okay, so moved. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
You guys.
Thank you.